Chefs Caleb Jang and Roren Choi are the owners of Magpie and the Tiger. After closing their brick and mortar, they are exploring lots of amazing things with their Korean American cooking concept. Over to you, Caleb and Roren.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
As Emily was saying, we are Magpie and the Tiger. My name is Caleb, and
I'm Roren.
we are the husband and wife duo of Magpie and the Tiger. So today, we're really excited because we wanted to showcase three quick kimchi and pickle recipes. What the three that we're going to do today is oi muchim, which is a cucumber pickle, a pichu kotchori, which is a quick version of kimchi, and then the last one is called chanachi, which is a soy pickle. We just wanted to get started, and we are just excited to be here. So Roran is going to show you guys how we're gonna do the oi muchim.
Yes. And right before we get into all of that, just wanted to kind of explain a little bit about our concept. So we say that we are a Korean American dining concept. We are very specific about that, and a lot of people have questions about that. They're like, well, so are you Korean? Do you only do panchans and like rice and things like that? Or are you American? Like, I'm very confused. And that's okay. It's okay to be confused. But we are hyphenated Americans. We are both Korean and both American. And so it really, our food comes out of our experience. So even the recipes that you see today, a lot of people have this idea of like authenticity and things like that. But a lot of it comes from what we grew up eating, what we were surrounded with, what kind of produce was available at the local grocery stores, how our mothers adapted to a new country and a new environment with, you know, somewhat similar ingredients, but they were different, and kind of adapting with that. And so a lot of what you'll see today is kind of our version of what came out of our experiences, and that's really what our food is about. And so we are very excited to share our experience with you guys as Korean Americans, especially with Happy AAPI Heritage Month. Woo. Yes, so like Caleb said, we're gonna go ahead and get started. The first recipe is called oi muchim. So oi translates to cucumber. And then muchim is basically the best translation for that is to kind of like the act of like coating something or to mix something. And so here I'll show you all of the different ingredients. So we like to use the English cucumber. It's just a little firmer and it's a little bit less watery than your kind of average like dill pickle, for example, or the average pickle that you'll see at your local grocery store. So if you go for the English cucumber, we just definitely prefer that in terms of flavor and water content as well. So a few ingredients here. We'll be putting, this is just, can you guys see it? My influencer. Things are not in check right now, but yeah. So we have sugar here. This is just plain white sugar. We have some minced garlic here. We have rice wine vinegar. We have sesame oil, scallions, and sesame seeds over here, and gochugaru. So gochugaru is a huge staple ingredient in Korean cooking. So it is red peppers that have been dried. Long time ago, it was all dried out like in the fields in the sun until they were nice and crispy, and then you would kind of pulverize them into a powder. So you sort of get this kind of texture. There's so many Korean ingredients or dishes that utilize this ingredient. This is just one of the ways that that'll happen. So we have the cucumber here. So we're gonna go ahead and cure this first. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and take some small slices. So we are gonna go for about roughly that thick, if you can see that. So it's not too thick, not too thin. And the idea is that when this cures, you're taking a lot of the water content out of it. So curing means we're sprinkling a little bit of salt. And what the salt does is that, remember your old high school like science classes, the plant cell, you're breaking down that cell wall. And when you do that, it releases the water content that's inside of those cells. So a lot of the water is going to be released, making this crunchy vegetable a little bit less crunchy and a little bit more soft. And so we're gonna go ahead and cut that. So if you have a mandolin, this is a great time to use it. Definitely be careful and watch your fingers. But basically that is the cut that we are going to be looking for right there. You guys can see that.
So it should be a 1/4 inch slice. Think about it if you want it more visually, maybe like 2 quarters stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
That's the thickness that you're going for.
Awesome. So when you do cure it, after you cut it, you're going to put it into a bowl and you're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over it. And basically what that does, and if you guys can see, this is the fresh cucumber that has been sliced right here. And then for here, this is it's been curing for a while. So there is some liquid here all the way at the bottom. So again, this is breaking down those cell walls. If you can see that kind of dripping right there. The water content is coming out, and that is what you want to see. Now, that is the stuff that you want to discard. So we want as least water as possible. So once you've done this, you're gonna take it and just brute strength. You're just gonna squeeze it. And you're gonna try to take a lot of the water out of it. And like I said brute strength, but you don't have to go like super intense. You're just trying to take most of like the little bits of water out of it. So as you can see, that texture is super different. It's a lot softer, almost like a pickle, right? So put that off to the side. So I'm just gonna do a little bit more. Squeezing and putting it off to the side, and one more. Squeezing and putting it off to the side. And while I'm doing this, I just wanted to explain. So one of the reasons why we chose these recipes and specifically cucumbers right now is because cucumbers, the late spring and into early summer is like sort of their prime season. So super, super delicious right now. And it's getting hot, and DC is disgusting when it gets into the summer. So we wanted to kind of present to you guys a lot of like low temperature, if like anything, no heat kind of cooking. So things that you can throw together that are super delicious and not just kind of your run-of-the-mill salad, but stuff to kind of make it a little bit more exciting. Alrighty, so here you can see that we have the cured cucumbers. Again, you can see how much the texture is different from before. Now we're gonna go ahead and make the pickle. So,
Hey, Roren.
yeah.
We have a question about the curing. Can you tell us about the amount of salt?
Sure. So almost do it in a sense where you feel like you're seasoning the salt. We do have the recipe, so there is a specific amount. But when we do it, we're basically looking at it where we're taking it's not too, like, think about it very much as like you're just coating the cucumber just a touch with a little bit of salt. You're really just trying to get the moisture out.
So specifically for the recipe that we are sharing, if you're using 1 large English cucumber, you'll use 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. So if you're using a different salt, be it like an iodized, like smaller grain salt, cut that amount by 1/3, just because the granules in an iodized salt are a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be saltier than kosher salt, which is like thicker and flakier.
Yeah, not all salts are equal. Alrighty, so moving on. So now we're going into seasoning and flavoring everything. So we have a little bit of salt going on. Now we're going to go in with a little bit of sugar. And all I'm doing is sprinkling it right on top. We're going to like really mix this all through, so it doesn't really matter right now how you put it in. A little bit of the minced garlic. We have, again, our rice wine vinegar. We have our amazing sesame oil. And we have our gochujang. And that I will just sprinkle right in. So this is what my bowl looks like right now. So all of the ingredients right on top. And all I'm doing is doing a simple mix. You can do this with your hands if you like. Alrighty. So I see that it looks like this right now, and I want to have a little bit more gochugaru. So you want it to have a little bit of a red tinge to it. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. And then mix it all up.
So a lot of the recipes that we have in the link are really good base recipes for you. So if you follow the recipe to the T, it'll give you a really delicious pickle. But everyone has a different preference for what they want. So if you want something more garlicky or spicy or less spicy, we encourage you to experiment with the flavors because it's your preference, it's your recipe and your pickle at the end of the day. And if you want it to be a certain way, please go ahead and try it. And this is just our recipe, but we really encourage you to try what you enjoy.
Yeah. Alrighty. So as you can see, it got a little bit more red. That's from the colors, obviously from the gochugaru. I'm really liking what I see here. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in my plate. And as you saw, we mean quick. It was really quick. Super delicious, very quick way to kind of amp up your summertime meals. And I'm going ahead and plating it, and all of the delicious rice wine vinegar and that sesame oil, make sure to get all of that. And then we're going to go ahead and garnish with a little bit of the scallions that we showed you earlier and some of our toasted sesame seeds. Alrighty, so there you go, our lovely little oimuchin dish.
Looks wonderful. Someone's asking, is there an optimal room temperature to store it?
So it might that comment might be talking about a different recipe. So the cucumber kimchi, all of the kimchis, because they are not fermented and they're a quick recipe, we really encourage you to put it in your refrigerator because they're not going through a fermentation process. It's going through like a quick pickling process. So for the cucumber kimchi, as soon as you finish it, put it in your refrigerator and it should last about a week.
Perfect, thank you. And one more question about where can people find some of the ingredients like the gochugaru chili flakes?
Yeah, so we have actually had some luck finding it at organic grocery stores. Over the years, we found that the Asian sections of grocery stores have expanded. And then if around you can find like a Korean market or like a specialty like international market, you might be able to find it there. If not, we've also used like online retailers, and you can find those, and they ship them really quickly. And then, so yeah, those are like the three ways that we are able to source them. And hopefully you have some luck finding them.
Thank you.
So the following recipe we're going to do, it is a dish that we is based on necessity. So this is called pechu kochori, and what that is like a quick kimchi. So this is something that we grew up eating when our parents, like my mom and Roren's mom, we ran out of kimchi, and it's sort of like that's sort of a disaster in a Korean household when you run out of kimchi. So something that my parents would do would make a quick version of a kimchi. So we wanted to show that to you today because it's very quick to put together, and it sort of holds you over until you're gonna make your next batch of kimchi. So something to keep in mind is that because this is a quicker kimchi, there are some differences between the two. So in terms of flavor, you're going to find that this preparation is a little bit sweeter. It's going to be less tart because it's not going through a fermentation process. And at the same time, it's going to be fresher because it's coming together very quickly. So I just wanted to show you how to do that. So what we're going to start with is this Napa cabbage. So in the recipe, it's going to call for like a small Napa cabbage. These are a couple of the leaves, and I just wanted to show you how to prepare them. Because it's quick, you want to cut it down into a more of a bite-sized piece. So I just took a stack of the Napa cabbage and put it right on top of each other. And then I'm going to cut it down the middle, lengthwise, and then cut it down into bite-sized pieces. So it should look like this, like a very, one-biter piece of cabbage. And what you're going to do with your Napa cabbage once you cut it is you're going to toss that with some salt to draw out the moisture in the cabbage, and then it's going to look floppier. So the amount of time is about 30 minutes to an hour. And because we don't have 30 minutes to an hour,
TV magic.
This is what I made earlier. So what we're doing is after the 30 minutes to an hour, it's going to go through a change in texture. So I'm just going to compare these two. So if you see this cabbage, I'm just going to bend it and it will snap. And it's just like not very bendy, but then once the salt gets into it, I could bend it as very much. And what that means is that it is ready to be tossed in with the rest of the ingredients. So once you get to this point, the cabbage is pretty salty. So we're just gonna rinse it really quickly and then kind of drain it and then throw in all the rest of the ingredients. So I'm gonna do that very quickly.
Yeah, and just like a fun, quick little fact / story is that I'm sure a lot of Korean Americans can relate to this. So we're very lucky in this area to have a really large like Korean and Asian population. So there's a lot of like larger retailers, Asian grocery store retailers that kind of kimchi always stocked, right? So it's really just like a little 10-15 minute or so drive away to get some kimchi. Sometimes you can even go like stay within DC proper to get that. Whereas where I live, which was Rochester, New York, it's Western New York. It's not necessarily the middle of nowhere, but it's no New York City, it's no LA, so it's not like we were getting constant shipments at the local, like small grocery, Asian grocery store of like kimchi. So this was definitely when he says that we have an emergency, it's that we are waiting on the next shipment. That's just kind of how it worked where I lived. And so this was very much a staple in my home because we have to wait sometimes weeks. And sometimes people would like hoard their kimchi, so we would have to wait even longer. So it's definitely something where this recipe has gotten us through for sure.
Okay, so now that the cabbage has been washed, you want to rinse it 1 or 2 or 2 to 3 times, just to get rid of the excess salt, because we're going to be adding a couple of ingredients that are salty on their own. So we're going to start with the gochugaru, Korean red chili flakes. We'll toss that in. Garlic. And then these are some garlic chives. So they just lend like a very delicious, like garlicky flavor along with the garlic that we just put in. If you can't find that, it's okay to leave it out. I just find that it tastes really delicious. So if you can find it, I encourage you to put it in. And there's some scallions right here. I'm just gonna toss that in there. And then a little bit of ginger too. So this is basically all of the ingredients you would do in a normal kimchi. So the following ingredient I'm putting in is some rice syrup. So you're adding a little bit of sweetness to it.
And one thing about this ingredient is that right now in like many countries, white sugar, like the granulated sugar that you see, is like very commonplace. It's very, you see it literally everywhere, including Korea. But back in the day, it's actually a newer product to a degree. So rice was in abundance, and rice, again, carbohydrates, sugar. And so where like Koreans originally derived a lot of their sugar to sweeten things was actually from rice. So this rice syrup is, if you see kind of like any dessert recipes or a lot of recipes that require sugar, oftentimes this was the original ingredient that was used to sweeten things.
So I just added the rice syrup, and I have some plum extract or plum syrup too. And then I'm gonna add that there into this as well. Finally, some fish sauce, and that's everything. But before I start mixing, I just wanted to show the ingredients that are sort of harder to find, and I just wanted to show what we have. So this is the rice syrup. If you want to take a screenshot, you can take it right now.
Here, maybe I could help.
So that is the rice syrup, and then right over here is the plum extract, and then this is the fish sauce that we like to use. So if you find those ingredients, those are the ones that we're going to use, and we really like them. So if you ever need a hand, because sometimes you can go to an Asian grocery store and find that it can be kind of confusing. So use those as your reference. So we're just going to mix everything together.
Yeah, and the same idea as with the plum extract. So again, white sugar, newer ingredient, newer products. What we often use, and if you are like somebody who does a lot of Korean cooking, especially with things like kalbi, for example, you'll see often that we put fruit or some kind of fruit extract into our food. And again, that's because natural sugar, it was the natural thing that we could find without sugar, like sugar cane and exports. So that is why, again, you will see a lot of fruit or fruit-based extracts in our cooking.
So this is how it looks right now. But once you finish mixing everything together, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like a very fresh kimchi. But what you would want to do after this is let it sit at room temperature for maybe a day or so, just to have the flavors develop. And then you could put it in your refrigerator. So that is the pechu gochuri, or emergency kimchi.
Yeah.
Thank you. We had a couple questions and a couple comments about when do you eat kimchi, and people are sharing different times and ways that they eat kimchi. But did you want to respond to that?
Oh yeah, so it's sort of like at least in my experience, Korean people find very creative ways to put kimchi in everything. So whether it is breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or a snack, there is kimchi in anything. And there's so many different ways to incorporate it into different dishes, whether it's a soup or there's like Korean pancakes that you can make with kimchi in it too. So it is a every day, every hour sort of ingredient, because it's so essential to what defines Korean cuisine.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So finally, our last ingredient, or our last pickle, is it's called changachi, and changachi is a soy pickle, but it doesn't revolve around a specific vegetable. So earlier we showed you a cucumber kimchi, and then this one is a Napa kimchi. But this is more about the pickling liquid base that you can adapt to a lot of different recipes. So we find this one to be really delicious and extremely versatile. So we encourage experimentation in this one. So Roren is going to take you through the process of the vegetables we chose today to highlight this jangachji.
So another little small note as we're showing you kind of the vegetables that we're going to be using today and putting a pickling liquid together. So a lot of Korean cooking, as if you've experienced it, is based on fermentation and pickling. And the reason why is because refrigeration, things like longevity of food, that is what we were like, or that people were going for, because it's really funny because we often say, you know, Koreans are very known about our Korean barbecue. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I love going to the Korean barbecue and, you know, grilling in front of me and all of that stuff. But it's really funny because that actually was not the like primary way that the majority of people ate for a really, really long time. Meat was a luxury. Meat was reserved for the noble class, you know? And so it was very hard to come by. And so a lot of what Korean cooking comes from, especially because of the like several wars and occupations and things like that, was basing a lot of the food preparation on preserving. And again, extending the longevity of like a cucumber or a cabbage that, you know, if you just left it out, it would go bad within a couple of days. Whereas kimchi, you could go months, you know, weeks and weeks and months, and still enjoy it and enjoy the developing flavors as it went. So same with pickling. Once you pickle something, it more or less lasts a really, really, really long time. And so this is one of those recipes that kind of came out of that time. Alrighty, so we're gonna start with the vegetables. So very classic and typical are going to be a pepper and an onion or some alliums. And so, and a lot of times you'll see like whole garlic. We're not going to use that today. But white onion, so really any kind of, and you can see we're also going to use celery. So all three of these ingredients are like a crunchy vegetable. So that's kind of what you're going for. So you could use a radish. So anything that kind of falls along that line, totally fine to use for pickling. So just going to move this so you guys can see. So we've already taken the onion and taken the peel off and cut it into these about like, what is this, 1.5 inch-ish pieces. And you're really going for chunks. So I just took this and kind of cut it up into thirds. So if you guys can see that. So pieces about that big. There you go. And then, so that's going to be the onion with the celery, which I think, by the way, highly underrated ingredient. It's not just for peanut butter. I really love celery. And we're going for chunks. So we just cut them kind of into small pieces. And then I'm just taking my knife and going down. And we're taking pieces that are roughly about that big. So, yeah. The influencer shot. There we go. Alrighty. So popping that in my bowl. And then the reason why I put on a glove is actually for the jalapenos. A little chef trick. Don't touch your eyes or anywhere sensitive, you know, when you are cutting peppers. That is a big mistake that many people have made. So I highly suggest if you have a glove lying around, a plastic or something like that, definitely go ahead and use it. This one, again, similar size to the celery. We're just going to make rings out of it. And don't feel like you need to de-seed this. If you want it to be a little less spicy, if you're kind of a spice adverse person, feel free to dig out all of the seeds, because the seeds are what hold a lot of the capsaicin, which is the chemical that kind of creates that spicy effect in your mouth. You can go ahead and like kind of dig those out if you want less spice, but I like it. So again, just little rings like this, like that. Go ahead and put that in. And then Caleb is going to go ahead and show you the pickling liquid.
So yeah, this is the base of the pickle. Like Roren said, you use a bunch of different vegetables. I really like using garlic or allium-based vegetables, because once the soy liquid hits it, it transforms the flavor and it just makes it just enhances all the flavors. So those are really, really good good vegetables to use. And in our recipe, we suggest a couple of vegetables to use if you need some suggestions. So I'm gonna just get started by cranking on my heat to high. And then right over here is just some plain water.
And if you have purified water, that is preferable. It's tap water.
And then adding some soy sauce. And then if you're curious about the ingredient amounts, they are in the recipes provided. Right over here, some rice vinegar. And because because there's vinegar and there's soy sauce, we're gonna balance it out with a little bit of sugar. So you're getting tangy, salty, sweet. And then this is our chef trick, is using a little bit of what Koreans call tashima. It's just a dried kelp, and it is the base of a dashi stock. And what that does is, this is a very umami-filled ingredient, and when you toss that in, it's just an extra layer of flavor that you will that you're going to have in your pickle. So once the pickle starts to develop flavor, that umami flavor is also going to be incorporated into your pickle. So you're going to get salty, sweet, tangy, umami, like that. Those are like the four, main flavors of like what makes something really delicious. So that's the goal. So we're going to let this get up to temperature. And then once it starts to boil, you're going to let it boil for 2 to 3 minutes, just to start getting everything incorporated and getting the sugar to dissolve. And then once the sugar dissolves and everything's boiled and it's hot, we're going to pour it over the vegetables that we cut earlier. So I'm going to take a little whisk and just try to incorporate the sugar into the pickling liquid. So at this point, we're just going to wait for our liquid to boil, and then until then, we're just going to answer any questions anyone has.
Great, thank you. Caleb, you mentioned that the recipes have some suggestions for different vegetables you could use, and we have a few questions related to that. For the Napa cabbage, what might you use instead of Napa cabbage? Just kind of anything crunchy, or any specific recommendations you would have?
So for the emergency kimchi, I wouldn't stray far away from like a cabbage. Our recommendation, and something we will use, is sorry, we have a little dog is barking. But we are I think the best alternative would you would find a cabbage, like you could use an American cabbage and see how that goes, but it has like a harder texture, so you might need to salt it for longer. I think if you went that way, it might turn out pretty well.
Great, thank you. And then another question is about peppers. Do you ever, or could you ever use hotter peppers like ghost peppers or habanero peppers?
Absolutely. That, it's just gonna add that like super spicy flavor to it. And again, like all of these ingredients. Sorry, a little dog is barking. So all of these recipes are, highly adaptable. So we would say, I wouldn't personally, because spice is really sensitive for me. But if you really love ghost peppers or very spicy things, go ahead and try it for sure.
Great. And then the celery one, someone is asking, does the texture of the celery change, or does it remain really crunchy in this recipe if you used it?
It will remain crunchy. So our suggestion is to use very hearty, crunchy vegetables, because they will retain their crunch even after pouring hot liquid onto it. So we have the hot liquid ready to go, and what we're going to do is just pour it over the jalapenos, the onions, and the celery that we prepared earlier. And what you're gonna do is just pour it until it's submerged. And then you're just gonna let it, you're gonna mix it a little bit and let it cool at room temperature. So the hot liquid is sort of, interacting with the vegetables right now. So it's like a hot liquid. It's gonna kind of seep into the vegetables, and as it cools, it's gonna incorporate the flavor into the vegetables, and then also the flavors of the vegetables will incorporate into like the pickling liquid. So you'll get like oniony flavors, celery flavors, and pepper flavor in your liquid, and that tastes really good on rice. If you want, or you could sort of use that as a marinade for other things too. This is a highly versatile thing that you're going to make, and I would suggest like not wasting the liquid once you finish your pickles. So this is it looks like this right now. So nothing's really changed because I literally just put the pickles on the soy marinade. But we wanted to show you what it turns into once it cools down. So we made one earlier.
Like much earlier.
And you could see that the soy sauce has seeped into the vegetables. And then the vegetables you see in front of you, that's like a Korean radish. And then we also use jalapenos as well. So, it's just going to seep into the vegetables. And you can keep it in your refrigerator as long as it's at a consistent temperature for quite a while. And then once the texture starts to break down too much, or you just constantly taste it and see if you like it. We tend to generally say you could keep it for about a month, but you might be able to keep it for longer than that. So those are the three quick kimchi and pickle recipes that we wanted to show you today. So that is the process of making some recipes that you could use during the summer, and that are very quick and easy to do. And we hope that you are learning a lot about like what other types of kimchis there are, rather than the traditional kimchi that we all know. So we are open to any questions.
Thank you. That was great to see. We have a question about soy sauce. Is it okay to use a gluten-free soy sauce? Would that work in the recipes, or do you have suggestions for substitutions there?
No, absolutely. You can definitely use a tamari. There's it's just 1-to-1. There's no like special thing that you would have to do with it. And it is a soy pickle, so difficult to kind of replace the soy there.
Right. Thank you. Question about, do you also make fermented kimchi, and could you talk about the difference in the preparation process?
So with the fermented kimchi, the ingredients will be generally the same, but the preparation will be different. So what you would do with the cabbage is that you would have it over salt for a longer amount of time. And then once you mix the ingredients together, you're going to let it sit out at room temperature, covered in your container. We use kimchi containers, which are specifically made for making kimchi. But if you don't have any access to that, using a mason jar or a crock pot, or like one of those pickle crocks, you can leave that out for 1 to 2 days, just to start to get the fermentation process going. So the bacteria and yeasts and things that start fermentation just need some time to get going at room temperature. And then once that happens, and you start to notice like the sour flavor, and you start to smell the kimchi all over your house, you can cover it and then store it in your refrigerator, and it lasts almost indefinitely.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pull out some kimchi that we have. So this is what the fermented one will look like, very typically. and then in comparison to the fresh emergency kimchi that we've made. So you can see a difference, but similar flavor profiles for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. You were mentioning using alliums, and someone's talked about garlic chives that they've used, and talking about that they're really easy to grow and that they self-seed. And I was wondering, do you now, or did you growing up grow any of the ingredients that you use?
Yeah, so my mom is like an avid gardener, so there would definitely be times where we would make like a bunch of kimchis just from the produce that she would make in her little garden in the backyard. And I don't personally know too much. I haven't done a lot of gardening, but my mom would always say that they kind of grow like weeds, so they're pretty easy to grow. So yeah, I mean it's always nice to eat local, and if it's in your own backyard, it's even better.
Also, we didn't do it today, but the quick kimchi that we did, the emergency kimchi, you can also do that. A very traditional one is actually using cilantro. And I know a lot of people think like cilantro is not really like very much an East Asian ingredient sometimes, but it is. And it also is, cilantro is something that is like very easily grown. You could probably just, go ahead and get one from a local store. And I have a black thumb, and I feel like I'm confident that I could do it as well. So if that's something that you guys wanted to do, that the emergency kimchi can also be adapted with cilantro as well.
Great. Here's a pressing question. Someone wants to know, how do you feel about kimchi grilled cheese? Creative idea or heinous fusion dish?
Oh no, 10 out of 10.
That's it's incredible.
Yeah.
We've definitely done that before. It tastes really good. It's like just adding a little bit of like pickly, like spiciness, garlickiness to like a already awesome grilled cheese. Is like there's nothing that can go wrong with that.
Honestly.
That's delicious. A few other questions about ingredients. Someone's asking, could I use gochujang or samjang in place of gochugaru?
No. So the difference being, samjang is actually a marriage of two different sauces. So gochujang is made from gochugaru and mixing in like a rice syrup essentially, or like a rice paste is the better word. And that is also fermented. Samjang takes that gochujang that I just described with another basically mother sauce of Korean cooking, which is doenjang, which is very similar but different to miso. The difference being it's a lot punchier, it's fermented for a little bit longer, and it's more coarse, where miso, I'm sure you've seen, eaten miso soup. It's very like homogenous, whereas doenjang is a lot more chunky, a little more like rustic, if you will. So samjang is actually the marriage of those two with like a bunch of different other ingredients in it. And both of them are in a paste form, whereas gochugaru, karu literally means powder. So it's a powder form of the pepper. Again, the original thing that you would add to the rice paste to make the gochujang, chang meaning like a sauce. So you would want to steer away from that, and you should actually go for the powder.
Wonderful. Thank you. Helpful to know. Someone's asking, is shiso ever used in kimchi?
So shiso is a pretty delicate ingredient, but I would say that in Korean cooking there is a vegetable vegetable called gennik, which is like a perilla leaf. It's the leaf that grows out of the sesame plant. It has a similar flavor. It has like a kind of fennel flavor to it, and that is often used in making like different kimchi. So like if it grows in Korea, it's usually made into kimchi. Or we'll try to find a way to pickle it or preserve it. So I would suggest maybe starting with using that as a base if you have a bunch of shiso that you want to see if you can kimchi kimchi it. Shiso also tastes really good if you muddle it in like a cocktail or make like a simple syrup out of it. And you could use that in like a very fruity summery drink or in a spritz or something like that. I've often had those sort of things. So you could try the kimchi route. You can also, make a delicious syrup out of it. You could also eat it with like fresh with different like foods. So it's a very versatile ingredient.
Yeah, I love those ideas. Thanks. Here's a question that's a little more general. So with the cucumbers, you mentioned using the mandolin, and then with the hot peppers, you were wearing a glove. Could you talk about some other key tools or favorite tools and utensils that are most helpful to have? Some of your chef tricks or any favorites that you use?
Oh, absolutely. I have one right here. It's a bench scraper. So if a plastic one we like because of its flexibility, or the metal one you can use. Oftentimes, I think a lot of people, especially, we cut vegetables daily, and it's literally our job. And so we're very comfortable around a knife. Whereas the average person is like, you're not cutting onions 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So given that, there's probably a little bit more fear involved when using a knife. So it's also a chef trick just because you can have more surface area with this. But say, you're cutting the vegetables and then you have, on your cutting board, you have all these vegetables, but you got to get them in a bowl. Easiest way is a bench scraper. So you go ahead and kind of scoop it up so you don't have to use your knife if you're like kind of afraid of it, and like less of a chance of cutting yourself, and just kind of go ahead and scrape it with the bench scraper. So bench scraper, I personally love. It's one of my favorite tools.
And I think it's very basic, but having a big, large cutting board is essential. Either a wooden or a plastic one. With the plastic ones, I often see like kitchens with like the very thin, like almost paper-like cutting boards, and those are awful for your knife, and they're all pretty awful to cut on. So I would really recommend finding a really good cutting board with like a big surface area, so that you're not, scrunching yourself over a cutting board trying to cut a bunch of ingredients. And then, other basics is like having a sharp knife and just like using those things. So having really solid basics can make cooking in a kitchen a lot more enjoyable.
Thank you. Yeah, those are great tips. Someone's asking, what is canip or perilla leaves?
Yeah, so we mentioned that earlier. That is the leaf that grows out of the sesame plant, and that is sort of akin to a shiso in terms of like flavor. So yeah, it has a kind of like a fennel seed flavor, along with like just like a herby and kind of a herby note to it. It's widely used in Korean food, just to add like a different dimension of flavor.
Thank you. Here's more of a sort of cultural question. Can you talk about the role that pickles play in Korean American cuisine?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question. So again, we grew up so we are both second generation children of immigrants. They came from Korea, and you don't just all of a sudden just start cooking whatever the food is of the new land that you arrived in. You're going to go with whatever you know and try your best with whatever ingredients you can find. And so it's very funny because we both grew up with exactly what you see here that we made, the jangachi, and like right next to the jangachi jar is going to be like a dill pickle jar, like a bread and butter like jar. And so we like the kimchi grilled cheese, like you said, that's like a perfect example of kind of what we grew up with. We're like, this grilled cheese is amazing because grilled cheese is amazing, but how could we even make it more delicious? And it's like what we had available in our fridge. And so the role that it plays is that it just made everything a little bit more delicious. It was, again, what was available. And, when you're a kid, most of the time you're not really thinking about like, oh, I have to meld all these flavors and make it harmonious. You're just like, I just want something really delicious. And I know instinctively, in a sense, that like my mom's kimchi is delicious. and these are the things that I have to snack on. Go ahead, throw it in the mix. So when Caleb said before, like, Koreans find every excuse to eat kimchi or, some pickles. That's really what happened. I would very much eat it with like Spam, for example, just really any kind of iteration of a snack like that I wanted. And I just felt like it needed something like a little zep. I would go ahead and like throw it in like a kimchi or a pickle for sure.
Thank you. Caleb, you mentioned before about places to find ingredients. Can you remind us, if people don't have a local Asian grocery near them, what you would recommend?
Yeah. So depending on where you live, the international section of organic grocery stores sometimes carry Korean ingredients. And then actually, some places have like Latin or international markets that there are times where they're owned by Korean people. So then they stock some of those ingredients that we mentioned before. And then if those options are out of the question, then going online and finding a website or some distributor that ships online would be the last resort. But it is also convenient, and it over the years has been a lot easier to find ingredients online as long as you know what you're looking for.
Great, thank you. Here's a question. You've shown us some quick pickles today and quick kimchis. Can you talk about when you would use a quick versus a fully fermented kimchi? Can you use them interchangeably, or are there certain situations where one would be preferable?
I would personally say that the emergency kimchi is definitely one that you want to eat like more fresh. So kind of as a panchan, and panchan, for those of you who don't know, it's like in Korean culture, the way we ask you like, have you eaten yet, is have you eaten rice yet? So rice is like almost always present at a meal. And when we have rice, we have these little side dishes called panchan that accompany a very traditional Korean style meal. So your pickles and your kimchi. So we would typically just kind of eat it with rice or like a protein, just kind of have that mix with the emergency one. Again, it is just kind of one to like get us through. Whereas the fermented one, that one is like also very versatile. So you can, again, eat it as a panchan. Again, that's a side dish with your rice. But that is also something that you can make into like a jjigae, which is like a soup. So many of you probably have heard of kimchi jjigae. So again, we're going for longevity. When your kimchi gets super fermented, like literally to the point where it's like effervescing when you eat it, like a nice like champagne, but it's kimchi. That's when it's gotten like, whoa, that's a lot of fermentation. It's a little bit difficult to eat just on its own with rice because it's just so potent and like powerful. And so we would normally take that, add like a fatty kind of cut of beef. So for example, pork belly is often used. And then put that into like a dashi. We call it yuksu. It's a very similar idea. So the tashima that you saw earlier and some anchovies, make like a very simple stock out of it and put that all together. And you have like a very simple soup that's like super deep in flavor because of the longevity of how long that kimchi has gone. I would say though, in terms of things like adding it to things, you could definitely add both of them to your kimchi, grilled cheese, things like that. So really kind of a lot of different ways to cut it.
Great, thank you. Someone is asking about Magpie and the Tiger, and I wondered if you could tell us about some of the work that you're doing besides educating us here with your business.
Yeah, so we had a brick and mortar in Washington, D.C., and then it closed last year. And what we have been doing is we do private dining and catering. So if you're in the local D.C. area and you're looking for Korean cuisine that you want to have at your house, we do basically open a restaurant in people's houses, and we create like custom menus based on the conversations that we have. And that is something that we really have enjoyed doing because we've been able to make things, suited to and customize menus based on the conversations that we have with the folks that have us into our home. And something that we're really excited and have been doing for the past month or so is opening like a Korean barbecue restaurant at your house. So everything that you really love about Korean barbecue, we bring all of that to your house and we grill it in your backyard using high quality ingredients, the highest quality ingredients that we could find. So that's something that we're really excited about and we want to promote because if anyone is interested in tasting our food or trying, what Magpie and the Tiger is outside of these classes, that's what we have. And we also are doing pop-ups with local chefs. So all of these things are, we post it on our social media page and also on our website and our newsletter. So if anyone's curious about what programs or events or pop-ups or catering that we have, please follow us and check out our website. And if you're interested in ever working with us or having us in your home, please send us a message and we'd love to continue that conversation.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. And just the final thing to piggyback off of that is that just in the spirit of AAPI Heritage Month, we often find ourselves in a place where we, are trying, people try to kind of pigeonhole us into like one thing or the other, especially with Korean cooking. They see us and they see the type of food that we do. And oftentimes it's like, oh, you just do Korean cooking. And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. Again, our food comes from our experiences about who we are and all of the things that we've brought, not just, in our homes growing up, but between the two of us, we have about 20 years of professional cooking experience in all different types of cuisine. So for example, I have butchery and bread and pasta making is like in my skill set. And he has whole grain croissants, for example, in his skill set on top of everything else that we know and we love. And so, we are also just in the business of definitely making space for us as well as more Korean American and Asian American chefs, so like hyphenated American chefs, to really come to the spotlight and show what our food is about and our cuisine is about.